Hi, my name is Sharmin Reehman. Welcome to Coffee and Conversations. I'm joined with Sharmin Reehman. He's heavily involved in the tech scene, the startup scene, and the whole ecosystem built here in Singapore. Sharmin, thank you so much for joining us today.
No, absolutely.
It's a pleasure
Happy to
have
be
you.
here. Thank you for having me here.
Can you tell us a bit more about yourself? Just give us a brief intro.
Yeah, sure. Happy to. So I've been in Singapore for almost 9 years and I'm loving it here. I started my career in banking tech, but my real passion is just core tech. And one of the things I do is I support the growth of tech companies launching from Singapore to the rest of Southeast Asia. There's a few key industries that I focus in. I focus in blockchain, health tech, AI, fintech, and IoT.
Fantastic. You're really at the forefront of everything.
I hope so.
Singapore really is the place to be when it comes to blockchain, IoT. There's so many initiatives here taken by the government to help companies expand, as well as for foreign governments to help expand companies into Singapore. Is there anything you've been working on, some projects recently? Have you talked to anyone that we might know?
Well, because I come from banking tech, my sweet spot is fintech. And for the government initiative, there's incredible support from MAS. As you know, that last year they had the FinTech Festival, which was the biggest in Singapore. When it started off 3 years ago, it was like a small blimp. And last year, they made so much money in terms of like funding the startups. They had over 30,000 people in foot traffic. Amazing initiatives and solutions from these fintech. A lot of these companies are now have a thick pipeline of solutions that they can help the Singapore government with. On top of that, MES also has regulations and a sandbox for some of these companies to develop their products further, which unlike some of the other countries in Southeast Asia is not as evolved. Now, having said that, Singapore is a small market, but what I tell a lot of these startups is that, get your business sorted here, really, refine what your product is for Southeast Asia and then expand and look into the other markets.
Singapore really is one of those efficient ecosystems in that sense. The MAS also comes out with a list of problem statements every year, right? I think it was 80 last year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the reason it does that is because it thinks that, if there is a problem, let's be transparent about it so that people can actually solve it. So it's very easy for me to sort of plug in startups into the space because I know what the demand is. So I sort of look at the supply and say that, can you help in this space? The best part is that if they can help, MAS and some of the other government initiatives like EDB and Enterprise Singapore will actually not only fund the startup to be in Singapore, but also help them with different grants and initiatives.
So in this sense, they're also looking for startups that are outside of Singapore and willing to bring them in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they've been doing that regularly because they realize there's a couple of things. One of them is that there is talent shortage here. There's only that many, the population is only that limited in tech. And also they're trying to sort of look at what is the curriculum now in some of the universities and how can they evolve so that for the future of Singapore to be in the forefront of health tech, smart city initiatives, they need to have, they need to have the population that can actually do that. Currently they don't, so it's not just only bringing in companies, but it's also bringing in talent from overseas.
It is that small lag in education and skill and resources on the talent front that Singapore seems very well versed in addressing.
Yeah.
So bringing in talent from abroad, training. I mean, I think Singapore Polytechnic already has an entrepreneurship class that's a mandatory course.
It is.
That's amazing that Singapore's at that level.
It is. I mean, Singapore has been really great, and I love the fact that they are so forward-thinking. They don't think now; they think like 2-3 generations ahead. The only thing is, if you look at Singapore 50 years ago, it was like a small island. Look at how much they've accelerated, right? But I guess at that time they really weren't thinking about things like data scientists or blockchain engineers. And if you look at some of the other countries, they are already quite evolved and sophisticated in that space. I think Singapore has a little bit of catching up to do. And also, if you look at fintechs and payments, right? It is one of the safest countries in Asia. So, if you look at some of the mom and pop shops and if you go to a hawker stand, it's still cash-based society. Because they're like, we're not going to get robbed here. Whereas if you go to Indonesia, where 90% of them are unbanked, you go to Africa, where there's very good chances you'll get robbed, people tend to be a lot more disruptive there and say, no, we have to move into a payment system where we are not carrying cash with us. So I guess in some ways, the fact that it's safe works against us, against Singapore. The other thing is that sometimes it's not a good or a bad thing, but because the government supports some of these startups they are not that hungry. Whereas in other places, they are on a shoestring budget and they really have to make it work in a year. Here, a startup can stay alive for 2 years from funding from the government and maybe, not try as hard. So maybe those are the things if they could tweak a little, I think, Singapore is, set to sort of be the tech hub, not only for the Southeast Asia, but all of Asia.